Dad's call came on November 15th while I was reviewing vendor invoices in my office. The walls were lined with framed photos. Culinary school graduation, James Beard Award ceremony, Michelin star celebration. But Dad had never seen any of them. "Daniel, about Thanksgiving," he said without preamble. "Your sister is bringing her boyfriend. He's a neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. Your brother just made partner at his law firm. It's going to be a celebration of their achievements." "Okay," I said, already knowing where this was going. "The thing is, it might be uncomfortable for you. Given your situation." "Why situation?" "Still working in restaurants. At your age. It sends the wrong message to have you there when we're celebrating real success." He cleared his throat. "Thanksgiving is for successful family members. You understand." I looked at the Michelin guide on my desk. Elysium, my restaurant, had just been awarded 3 stars, making it one of only 14 3-star Michelin restaurants in the entire United States. The review called it a transcendent dining experience that redefines American cuisine. "I understand," I said. "I knew you'd be reasonable. We'll do something another time." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my office for a long moment, then returned to my invoices. We had a full house tonight. All 62 seats booked, wait list of over 300 people. I had work to do. I grew up in a family that valued exactly 2 things: prestigious careers and the money they generated. Dad was a cardiac surgeon. Mom was a corporate attorney. My sister Grace was following Dad into medicine. Harvard undergrad, Johns Hopkins Medical School, now a neurosurgery resident. My brother Marcus was the golden boy, Yale Law, now a partner at a major firm at 34. And then there was me. I was the mistake, the aberration, the son who didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. I wanted to cook. Cooking is a hobby, not a career. Dad told me when I was 16 and said I wanted to go to culinary school instead of pre-med. Professional chefs make good money. They make survival wages. You'll spend your life working nights and weekends in hot kitchens, coming home smelling like grease. Is that what you want? It's what I love. Love doesn't pay for retirement, Daniel. Love doesn't earn respect. But I was stubborn. I got into UC Berkeley, Dad's compromise, a real university, even if I was studying the wrong thing. I majored in business and took every food science and nutrition course I could fit in. I worked in restaurant kitchens every night and weekend. "At least get an MBA, Mom pleaded. "Keep your options open." "I don't want options. I want to cook." After Berkeley, I applied to the Culinary Institute of America. Top program. Prestigious in my world, meaningless in theirs. Dad refused to pay. "You want to throw away your education to become a cook? Do it on your own dime." I took out loans. $87,000 for culinary school. I graduated top of my class, which Dad didn't attend because he was at a medical conference. The next 15 years were brutal. I worked as a line cook for $32,000 a year in San Francisco. Spent 70 hours a week in kitchens, burning myself on hot pans, cutting my fingers while learning precision knife work, being screamed at by head chefs who pushed me to be better. Still playing restaurant? Dad would ask at family dinners I rarely attended. "When are you going to get a real job?" I became a sous chef at 28. Salary, $48,000. The restaurant was prestigious in culinary circles. 2 Michelin stars, written up in Bon Appetit and Food and Wine. "That's nice," Mom said when I told her. "Marcus just bought a house in Georgetown. 4 bedrooms. Such a smart investment." I became an executive chef at 31. Salary, $85,000. The restaurant was one of the best in San Francisco. We were competing for Michelin stars, featured in travel magazines, drawing food critics from across the country. "Executive chef," Dad said at Christmas dinner. "So you're manager now? Maybe there's hope you'll move into the business side. Restaurant management is at least respectable." "I'm the head chef. I create all the dishes, manage the kitchen." Grace just finished a 72-hour shift in the OR. She saved 3 lives this week. Dad turned to my sister. "Tell everyone about the pediatric case." I stopped trying to explain. At 33 I did something crazy. I'd been saving aggressively, living in a tiny apartment, driving a 15-year-old car, putting every spare dollar aside. I had $127,000 saved. I took out another $340,000 in loans secured against my future earnings. I opened my own restaurant, Elysium, 62 seats, located in a converted firehouse in Soma. I was the owner, the executive chef, and often the guy who cleaned the bathrooms at 2 a.m. My family was horrified. "You took out how much in loans?" Mom asked. "Daniel, that's financial suicide. What if it fails?" "It won't fail. 90% of restaurants fail in the first year. This one won't." Dad was more direct. "You're 33 years old. Your siblings are building careers and wealth. You're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, working 80-hour weeks for no salary, betting everything on a restaurant in one of the most expensive cities in America." He shook his head. "This is the worst decision you've ever made." "We'll see," I said. What my family didn't understand was that I wasn't just opening a restaurant. I was creating something extraordinary. I spent 6 months developing a menu that told a story. California ingredients prepared with French techniques and Japanese precision. 24 carefully curated dishes. Every plate was art. Every flavor combination was intentional. I hired the best sous chef I could afford, a woman named Rachel who'd trained at Noma and shared my vision. I brought in a sommelier who'd worked at the French Laundry. I found servers who understood that fine dining was theater, and they were part of the performance. We opened in February. I paid myself nothing. Every dollar went back into the restaurant. Better ingredients, training for staff, building our reputation one perfect meal at a time. Year 1 we broke even. Barely. I survived on the staff meal and lived in my studio apartment with no furniture except a mattress on the floor. Year 2 the reviews started coming. San Francisco Chronicle, 4 stars. Elysium represents the future of American fine dining. Chef Daniel Chin is a revelation. Eater, the most exciting new restaurant in San Francisco. Every dish is a masterpiece. Bon Appetit included us in their Best New Restaurants in America list. Reservations went from struggling to fill to booked solid 6 weeks out. Year 3 we got our first Michelin star. The ceremony was one of the proudest moments of my life. Rachel cried. Our sommelier brought champagne. The entire kitchen staff celebrated like we'd won the World Cup. I texted my parents. Elysium got a Michelin star. Dad's response came 3 hours later. Congratulations. Grace just got accepted into the neurosurgery fellowship at Stanford. Year 4 we got our second Michelin star. Now we were in the conversation with San Francisco's elite restaurants. Reservations became impossible. 4-month wait list. Secondary market scalpers selling reservations for $500 a seat. I expanded. Added a private dining room. Hired 2 more sous chefs. Increased staff wages because I wanted the best people and I wanted to keep them. The restaurant was generating $3.2 million in annual revenue. After expenses, debt service, and reinvestment, I finally started paying myself a salary. $180,000. I was 36 years old and I'd built something significant. But at family dinners, the conversation still revolved around Marcus's latest case and Grace's surgical innovations. How's the restaurant? Mom would ask, polite but uninterested. Busy. That's good. Keeping the lights on is important in your industry. She turned to Marcus. Tell everyone about the Supreme Court brief you filed. Year 5 changed everything. The Michelin Guide announced their ratings in September. I got the call from our PR contact. Daniel, I'm not supposed to tell you this yet, but you need to be at the ceremony. We won our 3rd Michelin star. 3 stars. The highest honor in culinary excellence. The pinnacle of the profession. In the entire United States, there were only 14 3-star Michelin restaurants. I was now in the company of the French Laundry Alinea Le Bernardin. The awards ceremony was invitation only. The entire team went. 23 people who'd poured their hearts into making Elysium extraordinary. When they announced our 3rd star, Rachel grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. The room gave us a standing ovation. James Beard Award nominations followed. I won Best Chef, West 3 months later. Food critics called me a genius. Travel magazines listed Elysium as a bucket list destination. Food pilgrims came from Japan, France, Australia, willing to pay $650 per person for our tasting menu. The New York Times food critic gave us 4 stars. one of only 9 restaurants in America to hold both 3 Michelin stars and 4 New York Times stars simultaneously. Revenue hit $4.7 million annually. After expenses, I was taking home $440,000 a year. I'd paid off all my loans. I'd started investing in other restaurants. 3 more concepts in the Bay Area, each successful. My net worth, $2.8 million and growing. I bought a beautiful loft in Potrero Hill with a view of the bay. I bought a Tesla. I traveled to Copenhagen, Tokyo, and Paris during our rare closure weeks, eating at the world's best restaurants and bringing back inspiration. But I never told my family any of this. At Christmas, Grace announced her engagement to a cardiac surgeon. Everyone celebrated. I gave them a nice card and a generous gift certificate to a restaurant they'd enjoy. "How's your place?" Dad asked me over dessert. "Busy. Still open. Still open." "Well, that's something." He returned his attention to Grace's wedding plans. I stopped going to family events after that. Made excuses. Too busy at the restaurant. Staff shortage. Menu development. They barely noticed. November 15th, Dad uninvited me from Thanksgiving. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time. Around me, the sounds of a busy kitchen preparing for dinner service. Rachel knocked on my door. "Chef, the halibut delivery is here. Want to inspect it? Be right there." I pushed thoughts of my family aside and did what I always did. Focused on the work. On creating something beautiful. On giving our guests an experience they'd remember forever. That night we served 62 guests. Every dish perfect. Every service moment choreographed. A couple got engaged at table 14. An elderly woman celebrating her 80th birthday cried when she tasted the dessert course. This was my family now. The guests. The work. On November 20th, my reservations manager Sarah knocked on my office door. "Chef, we have a VIP reservation request for Thanksgiving night. We're fully booked." "I know. But this is a party of 8 with the last name Chen." The person who called said they were willing to pay premium. My hand froze over my keyboard. "Chen. I thought you might want to know given your last name. Could be relatives." I pulled up the reservation inquiry. The name, David Chen. My father's name. The reservation notes, celebrating family success. Bringing guests who appreciate fine dining. Request best table. Will pay premium rate for Thanksgiving. My father, who just uninvited me from Thanksgiving, had made a reservation at my restaurant. He had no idea I owned it. Elysium didn't have my name anywhere public. The restaurant was registered under my LLC. Press coverage mentioned Chef Daniel Chen, but Dad had never read a food magazine in his life. He didn't follow restaurant news. To him, restaurants were just places to eat, indistinguishable from one another except by price. "Sarah," I said carefully, "accept the reservation. Best table, table 1 by the window. Premium Thanksgiving tasting menu. Whatever they want." She nodded. "Should I mention you're the owner?" "No. Don't mention anything." After she left, I allowed myself a small smile. I spent the next week preparing the most extraordinary Thanksgiving menu I'd ever created. Traditional elements, elevated. Heritage turkey from a farm in Sonoma, dry-aged for 14 days. Served 3 ways. Breast with black truffle, confit leg with figs, crispy skin with sea salt. Oyster stuffing with champagne butter. Cranberry gastrique with star anise. Sweet potato velouté with brown butter and sage. Brussels sprouts with pancetta and aged balsamic. Pumpkin tortellini with amaretti cookie crumble and espresso foam. 16 courses total. Each one a small, perfect expression of Thanksgiving traditions reimagined. I brought in the entire team for a prep meeting 5 days before Thanksgiving. "This is important," I told them. "We're going to execute the best Thanksgiving service we've ever done. Every detail matters. Every plate needs to be perfect." Rachel gave me a curious look. "Special occasion?" "Very special. We practiced plating. We tasted every sauce. We refined timing down to the second. The servers rehearsed their presentations. The sommelier curated wine pairings for each course. By Thanksgiving morning we were ready. Thanksgiving evening, 6:45 p.m. The dining room was elegant and understated. Exposed brick walls, soft lighting, linen tablecloths, fresh flowers on every table. 48 guests for our first seating, including Dad's party of 8 at table 1. I watched from the kitchen window as they arrived. Dad in a suit looking self-important. Mom in an expensive dress. Grace and her fiancé David, both glowing with success. Marcus and his wife Jennifer. And 2 people I didn't recognize. Probably the impressive guests Dad had wanted to show off to. Sarah greeted them at the host stand. "Good evening, Mr. Chin. Your table is ready. Before we seat you, the owner asked if they could greet you personally." Dad looked pleased. "Of course. We appreciate fine dining establishments that understand service." "Wonderful. One moment." Sarah disappeared toward the kitchen. I took off my chef's coat and put on the dark suit jacket I'd hung in my office. Straightened my tie. Took a breath. Then I walked out into the dining room. Dad saw me first. His expression went from anticipation to confusion to shock in about 2 seconds. "Daniel." "Hello, Dad. Welcome to Elysium." Complete silence from their group. 8 people staring at me like I'd materialized out of thin air. "What are you doing here?" Mom asked. "I work here." I smiled. "Actually, I own here. Elysium is my restaurant." Dad's face went through several colors. This is your restaurant?" "For the last 5 years, yes." I gestured to the dining room. "All 62 seats. Would you like to see the kitchen?" "This is Elysium," Grace said slowly. "This is one of the best restaurants in San Francisco. This is a 3 Michelin star restaurant," Marcus finished. His voice was stunned. "You own a 3 Michelin star restaurant." "I'm also the executive chef. I create every dish on the menu." I looked at Dad. "So yes, I still work in restaurants. But I think my situation has improved somewhat since we last spoke." The 2 guests Dad had brought, a distinguished older couple, were looking at me with recognition. The woman stepped forward. "You're Chef Daniel Chin? We drove up from Los Angeles specifically to dine here. We've been trying to get a reservation for 8 months." "I'm honored," I said, shaking her hand. "I hope tonight's meal exceeds your expectations." Dad still looked like he might faint. "But, you never said. You never asked." I kept my voice pleasant, professional. "You knew I worked in restaurants. You knew I opened my own place 5 years ago. You didn't know it was successful because you never inquired further. You assumed I was failing because in your world, chefs are failures." "That's not," Mom started. "Mom, Dad uninvited me from Thanksgiving dinner because my presence would send the wrong message, while celebrating Grace and Marcus's success." I looked around at their faces. "Meanwhile, I run a restaurant that generates $4.7 million in annual revenue. I employ 43 people. I hold 3 Michelin stars, the highest honor in culinary excellence. I won a James Beard Award. The New York Times gave us 4 stars. We have a 4-month wait list for reservations." Marcus was pulling out his phone. I could see him frantically Googling. His face went pale as he read. "Daniel," he said quietly, "this article says Elysium is one of the 14 best restaurants in America. Depends on the ranking system, but yes, we're consistently in the top 20. It says the tasting menu is $650 per person." "That's correct. It says." He looked up at me. "It says you're one of the best chefs in the world. Some critics are very generous." Grace's fiancé, the neurosurgeon, stepped forward. "Chef Chin, I've read about your work. Your technique with modernist cuisine while maintaining classical French foundations is revolutionary. I've been trying to get a reservation for my parents' anniversary for months." "Send me an email," I said. "I'll make sure we take care of them." Dad finally found his voice. "Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" I asked simply. "If I'd called you 2 years ago and said, 'Dad, I just won my 3rd Michelin star,' would you have understood what that meant? Would you have cared?" He had no answer. "Dad, you told me for 15 years that I was wasting my life. That cooking wasn't a real career. That I'd made a terrible mistake." I paused. "You were so convinced I was a failure that you uninvited me from Thanksgiving so I wouldn't embarrass the family in front of your successful guests." The couple from Los Angeles looked uncomfortable. The wife spoke up. "Mr. Chin, if I may, we spent 8 months on the wait list to eat at your son's restaurant. People fly in from other countries to eat here. Your son isn't just successful. He's one of the most celebrated chefs in America. Dad's face was red. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. There's a difference. Every achievement I mentioned, you dismissed it. Every time I tried to explain what I was building, you changed the subject. You were so invested in your definition of success that you couldn't see mine. Daniel, I'm sorry. Don't apologize yet, Dad. You haven't had dinner. I smiled. Tonight you're going to experience what I've built. You're going to eat a meal that will be one of the best dining experiences of your life. You're going to understand exactly what I do and why it matters. And then, after you've experienced it, we can talk about apologies. I gestured to Sarah. Please show the Chin party to table 1. Give them the full Thanksgiving tasting menu with wine pairings. Everything we prepared. Yes, chef. I looked at Dad one more time. Enjoy your meal. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. I walked away before he could respond. Back in the kitchen, I addressed my team. Table 1 is my family. They didn't know I owned this restaurant. Tonight we're going to show them what we're capable of. Everyone ready? Yes, chef. The response was immediate, sharp, professional. Course 1 went out at 7:02 p.m. Amuse-bouche, oyster with champagne air and caviar. A single, perfect bite. I watched through the kitchen window as it was served. Dad looked at the tiny oyster shell with confusion. Grace's fiancé immediately understood. This was the beginning of a journey. Course 2. Butternut squash soup with brown butter, sage and a delicate foam. Served in custom bowls with precise garnish placement. Course 3. Wild mushroom tart with truffle and aged parmesan. I could see their expressions changing. Confusion giving way to surprise. Surprise giving way to genuine pleasure. Course 4. Seared foie gras with apple gastrique and brioche. The couple from Los Angeles were taking photos. Discreetly, respectfully. They understood they were experiencing something special. Course 5. Lobster with corn velouté and vanilla butter. Marcus's wife Jennifer said something to the server. I couldn't hear it, but the server smiled and nodded. Course 6. Heritage turkey breast with black truffle. Cooked to exactly 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Sliced thin. Plated with precision that took my sous chef's years to master. Grace put down her fork after the first bite and just sat there for a moment. I knew that feeling when food is so good it stops conversation. Course 7. Turkey confit with fig compote. Course 8. Crispy turkey skin with sea salt and herbs. A playful reference to the best part of Thanksgiving turkey, elevated to art. Course 9. Oyster stuffing with champagne butter sauce. The sommelier was pairing each course perfectly. I'd watched him select wines from our 2,400 bottle cellar, choosing based on flavor profiles that would enhance each dish. Course 10. Sweet potato velouté with brown butter and sage. Course 11. Brussels sprouts with pancetta, aged balsamic and hazelnut. Course 12. Cranberry gastrique with star anise, served as a palate cleanser. Dad had stopped looking uncomfortable. He was fully engaged now, present in each moment, experiencing what his son had created. Course 13. Pumpkin tortellini with amaretti cookie crumble and espresso foam. This was the dish that had won me the James Beard Award. Traditional pumpkin pie flavors reimagined as a savory sweet pasta course. Course 14. Artisanal cheese course with house-made accompaniments. Course 15. Pre-dessert. Apple sorbet with cinnamon and maple. Course 16. Final dessert. Deconstructed pecan pie with bourbon ice cream. The entire meal took 3 hours and 40 minutes. Every course timed perfectly. Every plate a work of art. Every flavor combination intentional and surprising. At 10:47 p.m. as they finished their final course, I walked back out to their table. They all looked up as I approached. Dad's eyes were different now. Not dismissive, not pitying, but seeing me clearly for perhaps the first time in 15 years. Chef Chin, the woman from Los Angeles said, standing to shake my hand, that was transcendent. Truly one of the finest meals of our lives. Thank you. That means everything. Her husband stood as well. We've eaten at 11 Madison Park, per se linea. This was their equal. Possibly their superior. He looked at my father. Mr. Chin, you should be enormously proud of your son. Dad nodded slowly. I'm beginning to understand that. The couple excused themselves, heading to the lobby. My family remained seated, looking up at me with a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite read. Grace spoke first. Daniel, I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were a chef, but I didn't understand what that meant. This. She gestured around the restaurant. This is art. Thank you. Marcus pulled out his phone. I've been reading about you during dinner. James Beard Award winner. 3 Michelin stars. Forbes 30 under 30 in food and wine from 5 years ago. How did I miss that? You weren't paying attention, I said simply. Mom had tears in her eyes. Sweetheart, that meal was... I don't have words. Every dish was beautiful. Every flavor was surprising. I've never experienced anything like that. That's what I do, Mom. That's what I've been doing for 15 years. Creating experiences that move people. That make them feel something. That give them memories they'll carry forever. Dad finally stood up. He looked older somehow, diminished. Daniel, I need to apologize. I know. No, I need to do this properly. He took a breath. I spent 15 years telling you that your passion was worthless. That cooking wasn't a real career. That you were wasting your potential. I was wrong about all of it. Yes, you were. I judged your success by my standards. Degrees, titles, income brackets. I never stopped to understand what success meant in your world. I never asked what a Michelin star was or why it mattered. I never cared to learn. His voice cracked. I uninvited my own son from Thanksgiving because I was ashamed of him. And he's been building something extraordinary the entire time. Dad, I'm not finished. He looked around the restaurant. You created this. You took hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and turned it into this temple of culinary excellence. You employ dozens of people. You've won awards I didn't know existed. You're literally one of the best in the world at what you do. And I told you it didn't matter. Grace stood up and walked to me, pulling me into a hug. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I should have asked. I should have cared. I've been so wrapped up in my own career that I never stopped to understand yours. Marcus joined us. Little brother, you've been crushing it for years and we were too blind to see it. Mom came next, holding me tight. I'm so proud of you. So incredibly proud. And so ashamed that it took eating here to make me realize what you'd accomplished. Dad was the last to approach. Can you forgive me? I looked at my father. This man who'd driven me to prove myself, who'd doubted me for 15 years, who'd finally understood what I'd built. Dad, I don't need to forgive you. I need you to see me. Really see me. Not as a disappointment or a failure or someone who chose wrong. But as someone who found their calling and pursued it with everything they had. I see you now. Good. That's enough. He pulled me into an awkward hug. He smelled like expensive cologne and the truffle from course 6. I'm sorry I missed so much of your journey. You're here now. That counts for something. We stood there in the dining room of my restaurant. My dream made real. While the last guests finished their meals and my kitchen team began breaking down stations. Dad, I said, pulling back from the hug. I need to get back to work. We have another seating tomorrow and prep starts at 6 a.m. Of course. Can we come back? Maybe when it's not a holiday and we can actually talk. Sure. Call Sarah, my reservations manager. She'll get you in. Not the 4-month wait list? Family gets priority. I smiled. Even family that uninvited me from Thanksgiving. He winced. I deserved that. Yes, you did. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and 203 text messages. Grace had posted on Instagram a photo of one of the courses with the caption, "Last night I learned my brother Daniel is one of the best chefs in America. How did I not know this? So proud and so ashamed I never asked. At Elysium SF is extraordinary. Hashtag 3 Michelin stars, hashtag proud sister." The post had 12,000 likes and hundreds of comments. Marcus had posted on LinkedIn, "Sometimes we're so focused on our own definition of success that we miss the extraordinary achievements happening right next to us. My brother Daniel Chin is the owner and executive chef of Elysium, a 3 Michelin star restaurant in San Francisco. He's a James Beard Award winner. He's one of the best in the world at what he does. And I spent years dismissing his work because I didn't understand it. Lesson learned. Success comes in many forms. Congratulations, Daniel. I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize your brilliance." That post had been shared 847 times. Mom had called 6 times, texted 15 times, all variations of, "I'm so proud of you," and "Can we talk?" Dad had sent a single text at 6:23 a.m. I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what you've built. Can I take you to lunch? I want to understand your journey. Really understand it. I responded, lunch Tuesday? I'm off Monday but back on prep Tuesday afternoon. His response was immediate. I'll be there. December brought changes I hadn't expected. Dad came to lunch and we talked for 3 hours. Really talked. He asked about the Michelin star process, about how I developed dishes, about the business side of running a restaurant. He took notes. He asked intelligent questions. The risk you took, he said, putting up everything you had for that leveraged buyout of the equipment and lease. I would never have had the courage. You perform heart surgery. You literally hold people's lives in your hands. That's different. I was trained for that. What you did, betting on yourself with no safety net, that's terrifying. I smiled. Now you understand why I did it. Because I believed in myself even when no one else did. He looked down at his coffee. I should have believed in you. You believe in me now. That's what matters. Grace started coming to the restaurant once a month, sitting at the kitchen bar where she could watch service. She brought her fiancé David and they'd stay for hours, asking questions about techniques and ingredients and the science behind cooking. You know, she said one night, this is medicine too. You're nourishing people, making them happy, giving them experiences that heal them emotionally. It's just a different kind of surgery. Marcus wrote a blog post about his experience that went semi-viral in business circles. What I learned about success from my chef brother. It was thoughtful and honest about his own blind spots. Mom joined the board of a nonprofit that provided culinary training to at-risk youth. I want to help kids like you, she said. Kids who have passion but no support. Kids whose families don't understand that there are many paths to success. In February, Elysium won another James Beard Award, Best Restaurant in America. The ceremony was in Chicago. My entire family came. Dad sat in the front row wearing a t-shirt that said, Proud father of a James Beard Award winner, that Grace had made for him. When they announced my name, he stood up and cheered louder than anyone else in the room. At the after-party, a reporter asked him, Mr. Chin, you must have always known your son was talented. Dad looked at me for a long moment, then back at the reporter. Honestly, I didn't. I spent years not seeing his talent because I was looking for the wrong things. I'm grateful I finally opened my eyes. The reporter looked confused, but I understood. It was the most honest answer he could have given. In March, I did something I hadn't done in years. I closed Elysium for a private family dinner. Just the family. Mom, Dad, Grace and David, Marcus and Jennifer. 8 people in a 62-seat restaurant. I cooked for them personally. Not the tasting menu but dishes from my childhood. Mom's favorite dumplings, elevated with premium ingredients and modern technique. Dad's preferred Peking duck, reimagined with a 3-day preparation process and 5-spice maple glaze. The green beans Grace always requested, now with black garlic and almonds. Traditional food from our family dinners, transformed through the lens of everything I'd learned. Between courses we talked. Really talked. They asked about the pressure of maintaining 3 Michelin stars. I asked about Grace's upcoming wedding plans. We laughed about memories from childhood. Good ones I'd forgotten about. Remember when Daniel was 8 and tried to make us breakfast? Marcus said. He made scrambled eggs that were somehow both burnt and undercooked. I was practicing, I protested. You've improved, Dad said dryly. Everyone laughed. At the end of the meal, over the dessert course, a deconstructed version of Mom's apple pie, Dad stood up with his wine glass. I want to make a toast to Daniel. For having the courage to pursue his passion despite his family's doubts. For building something extraordinary through years of hard work and sacrifice. For being successful on his own terms, not ours. He paused, emotion clear in his voice. And for being gracious enough to forgive us for being blind. To Daniel, they all echoed, raising their glasses. I raised mine as well. To family. Even when they take a while to come around. We drank. We laughed. We stayed late into the night sharing stories and wine and the kind of connection I'd thought was lost forever. As they were leaving, Dad pulled me aside. Thank you for tonight. For sharing this part of yourself with us. Thanks for showing up. I'll always show up now. That's a promise. He kept that promise. The following Thanksgiving, Dad called me in early November. Daniel, about Thanksgiving. Yes. We're doing it at your restaurant. All of us. Grace wants to bring David's parents. Marcus wants to bring Jennifer's family. I'm inviting some friends from the hospital who appreciate good food. We'll take over the whole restaurant if that's okay. You want to rent out Elysium for Thanksgiving? I want to celebrate with my son. In the place he built. Properly this time. I smiled. I'll make sure we're ready. That Thanksgiving I served 62 people. Family, extended family, friends, loved ones. The entire restaurant filled with people celebrating not just the holiday, but the journey that had brought us here. Dad gave a speech before the meal. Last year at this time, I uninvited my son from Thanksgiving because I thought he was a failure. It remains the stupidest decision I've ever made. Daniel isn't just successful, he's exceptional. He followed his passion despite our doubts. He built something beautiful despite our lack of support. And he was gracious enough to let us back into his life even after we'd dismissed everything he'd accomplished. He raised his glass. To second chances. To seeing clearly. To being proud of the right things. To Daniel, the room echoed. I looked around at the faces. My family, my team, my chosen family of staff and mentors and friends. Rachel was crying. Sarah was beaming. My sous chefs were standing in the kitchen doorway watching. This was success. Not the Michelin stars or the James Beard Awards or the revenue numbers. Though those mattered too. This was being seen. Being understood. Being celebrated not despite who I was but because of it. Thank you all for being here, I said. Now let's eat. I've been cooking for 3 days and this turkey isn't going to serve itself. As the meal began, course after course of my best work shared with the people I loved, I thought about Dad's text from a year ago. Thanksgiving is for successful family members. He'd been right in a way. It just took him a while to realize I'd been successful all along.